Hello and welcome to Senior Solutions, where we bring you topics impacting seniors and their families. I'm your host, Mindy Felinton. Have you ever gone to the doctor and you think, wait a minute, did I really see the doctor? Because you're in and you're out and you haven't even had the chance to really process what they've said. Well, I'm joined today by Dr. Aimee Seidman, who's a concierge doctor who actually spends time with her patients. So I want to welcome you, Dr. Seidman, and thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
And we're eager to kind of hear about the concierge practice and how that's very different from traditional medical practices. Can you tell me a little bit about what a concierge practice is?
Sure. It's very different. And I think the most noticeable difference is the amount of time we spend with people. For a routine follow-up, we always just automatically reserve 30 minutes just for a routine follow-up. I could spend 2-3 hours with a new patient, and very often I ask my patients how much time they'll need, because we're just not rushed. We have a much smaller patient panel, and the whole point is that we can spend as much time as we need to. And the stress is down for our patients, the stress is down for us, because we know we're getting done what needs to get done.
Well, I would imagine it's really important from the perspective of, number one, your patients being able to understand what it is that's happening with them medically, and number two, being able to integrate a variety of different aspects of their life, not only from the medical, but the kind of psychosocial as well.
Right.
That the stereotypical doctor visit isn't going to allow for.
Right. We have time for all that, and that is very important. I mean, people aren't just a medical problem. They're a combination of everything in their lives. So if I have a patient who's going through a traumatic experience or a lot of stress, there's no question it's going to impact on their health. But I have time to talk about it, whereas in our previous practice, when we had 3,000 patients in 2 offices, that kind of stress did not allow for that kind of intimacy. And I actually do mean intimacy, because we're very close to our patients. We're family, friends. It's a very good feeling. And we have 3-4 generations of people coming from grandpa or great-grandpa to the late teen in our practice. And it's really nice. And we feel very close to people. But we have time for that stuff because it's very important and it impacts on their medical health.
How else is your practice different from a traditional medical practice?
Well, we're traditionally trained, just like our colleagues in internal medicine are. We're all trained pretty much the same way. The difference is we have moved on to a much slower pace, a much smaller practice, where we have time to do all the things primary care doctors really want to do and really should do, which is coordinating care, which is giving our patients time to vent, which is speaking English in the office, so that...
What a concept.
Right, what a concept, so that things are clear. And I think I spent a lot of time coordinating with other physicians. And frankly, they're relieved, because I think they all want to be everyone means well. They want to be spending more time. Everybody is worried about missing something. But when you have a primary care colleague who is attending to the details and calling up saying, I don't know what you're doing, I really don't understand, the patient doesn't understand, or if I have a question or a thought, it just really works well. And the patient's care is very well coordinated. There's not one hand not knowing what the other hand's doing. There's one medication list between all of us. There's one set of labs generally between all of us, so the patient's not getting stuck all the time for blood tests. And that's a real pain in the neck for patients. Yes. And a lot of bad things can happen when one doctor doesn't know what the other doctor is prescribing.
Yeah, that's a frightening thought.
And it really, we have time to be classical internists, the way
kind of
we
like,
wanted to be.
Who
like
was
Marcus Welby.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
That's who I was
I actually have a picture of Marcus Welby and the young Dr. Kiley. On our winch set, one of our patients brought it in and wrote in herself, "Dear Amy, love Mark," or something, Mark Welby. So it was kind of funny.
Cute. Very
we don't look much like him. But
no, unless you had some operation there we didn't know about.
Right. He's just taller. That's what it is.
Yeah.
He's taller. But it's exactly that feeling.
And is there a number of patients who you have, as a maximum number of patients who you will treat?
We'll take maximum 400 for me and 200 for my colleague, Dr. Goldmark, because she's part-time. However, 24/7 available.
Which is one of the other things I was going to ask you with regard to your availability. Is it not part of the concierge practice?
Totally.
Where you're 24/7, and you also, Marcus Welby, make the house calls?
Yes, we do. I mean, we don't do them all the time. We do it when it's the difference between going to the emergency room and not going to the emergency room. There's no question. I want to make the house call. I don't want my patients to go to the emergency room, and they sure don't want to go.
Of course.
It's also come in very handy in times when I've had people who are in end-of-life type settings. I've had recent house calls I've made for some of my patients who've been on hospice, and you can't not be there. It's just, you can't miss that part of their lives because they really need you and their families really need you, and it really makes a big difference for families, the burdens they feel, and it makes a difference for me. And my patient, we have closure.
Right. Because
we need.
You've grown an attachment with your clients.
We're very attached.
Well, you and I have a common client patient, and she's, of course, allowed us to share her name, but she's actually been a guest on the show. She was my first guest when we started Senior Solutions a couple months ago. But Betty Struble certainly spoke very highly of you as one of her angels, as well as me as one of her angels, helping her through the legal. And
speak of the devil, I should say. She's an angel.
Yes, she is an angel. And she talked about that bond, and even her husband, who was very adamant about not wanting a female doctor, I think is who ended up just adoring you and really benefited from what she shared, from being able to have that one-on-one and that time that you devoted to her. So,
as I've said many times, I'm lucky to have a lot of the patients I have. I mean, Betty, what can you say about Betty?
Yeah.
You're just lucky to have her in your life.
Yes.
And I have a whole panel of patients like that. But she and Jim did a lot of suffering. And with his premature onset of Alzheimer's disease, it was just awful for both of them.
He was in his 50s.
He was in his 50s when he developed it. And I felt good about it from beginning to end, at least professionally. I mean, it was incredibly sad for both of them, and they were both really stressed, and he knew what was going on. But to be there at the end so that he would not have a bad death. There's a real big difference between a good death and a bad death, and there are some really amazing books written by some palliative care guys that are just amazing, but there's such a thing as a good death. It's dying with dignity and dying without prolonged suffering, and doing it with closure, with comfort, surrounded by who you want to be surrounded by, and without being attacked by medical professionals. Sometimes it's just an assault, the way we do tests and stuff like that, when people are no longer really wanting that for themselves. And when you have the opportunity to get to know people, you really get an opportunity to learn what their wishes are regarding things like end-of-life care. And that's one of the most important things in your relationship, is making sure that when that time comes, you're going to respect your patient's wishes, and you're going to help them get what they deserve and help them not suffer when that time comes. That's very important to us.
Yes. And I guess that's part of your conversation that you have when you're meeting with your patients. Are you also helping them with the new MOLST forms as well? Do you want to talk a little bit about how that works?
Sure. The MOLST form stands for Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. And at least in Maryland, we've been doing that for about a year and a half in our nursing homes. I'm a medical director at Asbury Methodist Village, and we've been doing it there very compulsively for about a year and a half now. And a MOLST form differs from an advanced directive in that it's more of a here and now. Like right now I'm in the hospital and I'd be willing to have a blood transfusion and I'd be willing to have medical tests. But 6 months later, when they're not in the hospital anymore and things are winding down and they've really had enough they can say, now, no blood transfusions, no hospital transfers, etc. The advanced directive will say, if I'm in a terminal condition, if I'm in an end-stage condition, if I'm in a persistent vegetative state. The state has very strict definitions of what they are. So it really only gives you 3 options. It gives you 3 scenarios. The MOLST gives you a little bit more different areas to look at and make decisions about, and it's the here and now. And you can change your MOLST anytime. You can change your advanced directive too, but it's easier to change a MOLST because it's just a quickie form.
Right. But that's something you complete with your patients.
Right. Right.
Okay. And the advanced directive is something they would do perhaps with an attorney or...
Sometimes, yeah, but if there's a form on the Attorney General website that...
Right. And would you say that you see a difference in your practice when you're dealing with your elderly patients versus your younger patients? What would those differences be?
Seniors are not just older 20-year-olds. I mean, they have different physiology, they metabolize drugs differently, and they have different medical problems. And you have to be extremely careful with medication in the elderly. They are much more sensitive to it and are more prone to have what we call polypharmacy, meaning being on a gazillion drugs.
Okay.
One of the most fun things for me is when I can shorten someone's med list. The nurses are always happy about that, too, the nurses in nursing homes. Whenever you can shorten someone's med list, A, they're going to do much better, and B, everybody else is happier because there's less ridiculous stuff having to go on.
And the patient, too, I'm sure.
Thrilled.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot, that people, when their meds are really examined, they end up reducing them, and they end up feeling better.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun to do that. It really is. You just feel like you're accomplishing something.
So why is it, do you think, that they were on all those meds and...
It's really a classic problem. You go from doctor to doctor, and each doctor wants to fix their problem. And their problem sometimes means 1 or 2 medications. But then I have to deal with the whole.
Which is one of the great benefits of working with a concierge doctor like you and
that's how we
Dr.
see
Goldmark.
That's how we see it.
Yeah, well, I would too. Because I'm a big proponent of the less medication I have to take, the better. Well, it just makes sense.
Well, I mean, we like to think that it's an investment in your health. To be in a concierge practice, it's not as expensive as people would think, but it's an investment in your health. And you invest in what you choose. You can get a nice car, you can go get a latte at Starbucks every day, or you can be in a concierge practice.
But do you want to share with us what the average costs are for the concierge type of practice?
For someone under 40, it's half price. It's about $9.80, I think. For someone between 40 and 65, just because people over 65 tend to be more time and work, it's $18.50, and then it's a little more. It's $19.10 for someone over 65. Mm-hmm. And considering the amount of work and time and hours we put into it, it doesn't amount to much per time.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Right.
So is it really a profitable scenario for you, I guess, is what comes to my mind, just thinking in terms, and that was sort of rhetorical. But
no, it could be profitable. It is mildly profitable right now.
Yeah.
I certainly did better before, but I can sleep. I have a clear mind.
Yeah. Psychologically, it's very profitable.
Psychologically, there's no comparison.
Because you're able to build those relationships.
Exactly.
And that's more meaningful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And knowing that you're doing the right thing from
and you
your
have time
your
to
approach.
think it through.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'd like to kind of pick up on that about how Medicare plays into that as well.
Uh-huh.
So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Seidman.
For every pound you lose, that's 4 pounds of pressure off the knees. To find out more, go to fightarthritispain.org.
Hair loss. Now this rash on my face. What's going on?
For answers, ask your doctor the right question.
Could I have lupus?
Welcome back to Senior Solutions. I'm your host, Mindy Felinton, and I'm joined today by Dr. Aimee Seidman, who's a concierge doctor who actually spends time with her patients. We left off where we were talking a little bit about the payment structure, and Dr. Seidman, I wanted to ask you about relative to that, Medicare, how does that play into the practice?
Unfortunately, Medicare, it's a big deal for a geriatrician not to take Medicare anymore. That was a big soul-searching thing.
Goal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your patients have Medicare, and
Right.
you want their lives to be easier when it comes to seeing you. But unfortunately, Medicare currently is so inadequate that it doesn't even give people any reimbursement for seeing me, whereas most of the private insurers will at least give some out-of-network benefits to people when they submit a receipt that we give them. Yeah. I often fantasize about sitting down with President Obama and having a cup of coffee and giving him the world according to me as far as Medicare.
Well, I think you should.
Yeah. No, I love him. But I think that Medicare needs a bunch of tweaking. Unfortunately, right now, it does not give people the freedom that they need to get done what they need to get done. So people don't get reimbursed for their visits when they have Medicare. And the private insurers, most of them do, at least if it's a PPO.
Okay, great. Good to know. So what are some of the biggest concerns that you're seeing with their seniors who are coming in and their families?
I think people are inadequately prepared for end-of-life issues. That is my big concern. I think that when we think about our healthcare dollars and nationally, I think if there was a bigger push to have Americans pay more attention to their desires and wishes at the end of life, we'd be spending a lot less money on stupid things.
For example?
For example, having a senior citizen with end-stage cancer being in an ICU, or when they belong in a comfortable surroundings with loved ones and family members, maybe in a hospice setting. The amount of extraneous testing that's done when people are of a certain age, it's not the age as much as it is their medical condition. I mean, I have a guy who's 100 and he's fabulous. He's 100.5.
God bless him.
And he's fabulous. It's the condition that they're in that I mean. When it's very hard also for families to let go. It's harder for the families, the children of seniors, to let go than their parents. Their parents are half the time saying, "Oh, leave me alone already. I've really had enough. I'd like a little peace here." And it's usually their children who are in pain and who are suffering and are having trouble coming to terms with not doing any more medical testing, not rushing your loved one to the hospital when things come up. If people really, if the country was educated better in end-of-life issues and asking that patient, that senior citizen, do you want all this crap or not? Most of them would say, absolutely not.
Right.
I can remember having this conversation with my grandfather when I was in medical school. He laughed in my face. I mean, a lot of seniors would just say, leave me alone. And it's the offspring that are in the most pain. And I like to work with people's sons and daughters on that, helping them, because they're in worse shape than their parents emotionally.
How do you help them through that process?
Well, we talk about this very subject and how things like CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, it has no role in the care of an elderly patient. CPR is a thing that was designed to help youngish to middle-age people who have a witnessed cardiac arrest come back to life. When you do that to a senior citizen, not only do you frequently not get them back to life, if you do get them back to life, they're frequently either vegetables or far worse off than when they walked into the hospital. And they have broken bones. There's nothing worse than doing CPR. As a practitioner, doing CPR on someone and feeling that horrible feeling that you're breaking this little old lady's bones underneath your hands. I mean,
I have heard
it is
that.
horrible. I'll never forget during residency doing that, and I've really never forgotten it because it's a horrible feeling. A feeling like you're assaulting somebody. It has no role in the care of most elderly people. It's designed for young people who have a heart attack while someone's watching them.
So what would be the cutoff point, age-wise, give or take, that you would do the CPR?
I don't think that most people in their 70s and 80s should be Well, I shouldn't say that, because the truth is it's more their medical condition. Because I have people in their 70s who are fabulous, and if they had a sudden heart attack that was witnessed, absolutely, they would probably benefit from that procedure. But when you're elderly, 80s, 90s, more, or very sick and younger, it has no role. It does not belong there. It's an assault on the patient, and it's a waste of healthcare dollars. Because then, what do you do with them once you bring them back? Then they're in a nursing home for the next 5 years, or less if they don't survive. It's a disaster.
Is that a situation then when you would recommend to people to have a do not resuscitate?
I'm constantly having that discussion with people, constantly.
Yeah, I would think so.
Not enough people are thinking clearly. But it's partly the medical community's fault. We don't have the time or inclination or whatever to be talking about those really important end-of-life issues. That's why I kind of fantasize about talking to someone about having a national education program about end-of-life issues. I just think that more people need to be thinking about this in advance.
Well, I think I've found a new career path for you. I'll vote for you for leading that.
Thank you so much. I think not, but it's for someone else to do.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, that being said, let's talk about why your practice is so suited for seniors.
I think the main thing is the access. I mean, I think it's also my partner, Marcia Goldmark, and I. We have the kind of personalities that I like to think we put people at ease. We're not terribly serious unless we have to be, and it's not scary coming to our office. Our staff is just sweet and warm. We're always thanking people for compliments we get about our staff. It's just a mellow, nice atmosphere. And the 24/7 access is one of the biggest things. I remember when I started this, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be on call 24 hours a day, every day, including the weekends. The truth is that when people know that they can reach their doctor at 7:30 in the morning and get an appointment at 8:30, or they know that they'll be seen that day, or they'll be able to talk to you early, the anxiety of the whole thing is gone. We get very few calls at night for that reason, because people aren't scared anymore.
Yeah, they're not anxious.
I mean, how many times have you heard someone at 2 o'clock in the morning, they wake up, they feel sick, they're frightened, they're scared to death, they go to the ER, or they call their physician's answering service. Well, when you don't have that kind of anxiety, because you know you could be seen that day, you don't have to call. And it's the anxiety reduction is one of the biggest parts of a concierge practice. And that goes for the middle-aged people, young people, and older people.
Right. Yeah, anybody, because I'm thinking about that in terms of my own lifestyle.
Right.
It would be nice. And just to know that there's the availability, because I guess within your structure you have a policy where the person can get in to see you within a 24-hour time frame. I mean,
it's no problem.
They don't have to wait. I'm sorry, Dr. So-and-so doesn't have an appointment available for the next 3 weeks.
I used to have I'm in pain. I used to have a 4-month waiting list for routine things.
When you were in your other
right.
general.
I mean, it's a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
You need to have space to fit people in for emergencies, urgencies, or whatever's on their mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. As a patient, it's just frustrating to get a call, get a response on the other end of the phone line that, despite that you're in pain, Ms. Felinton, we can't, the doctor can't see you.
Sorry, we're busy, right.
So, what a wonderful relief for people to have that.
Yeah. Well, if you feel you deserve that kind of health care, you invest in it.
Good point. And tell me about some of the patients who you've worked with, kind of how you've helped them along, where a doctor in a traditional type of medical practice might not have been able to help them.
A good example would be an older gentleman who has, I'm thinking of him in particular, he has both asthma and ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, I don't remember which one, which means he's on large doses of a drug called prednisone, which is an immune suppressant. Well, prednisone in large doses and over long periods of time can suppress your body's adrenal glands, which is the gland that's responsible for providing stress hormones. Well, he started declining, and I think that if I hadn't had more the time I did to spend with him, I wouldn't have thought about the fact that his pulmonary doctor was giving him steroids and his gastrointestinal doctor was giving him steroids, and put it together that he had adrenal insufficiency. So that was fun for me, because I hadn't, because I found the answer, and he's doing great. I mean, he's 85, but he's doing great.
Right. Well, 85 in a lot of circles.
Actually, he's 88.
Young.
People say, but the 85 is the new 35, as far as I'm concerned.
It's true. It's true.
That's an example. And then I think, as I mentioned, being able to have closure with people because I have the time. A recent patient of mine passed away from a brain tumor, and I had time for closure. I had time to be at his bedside, and it was the same for Jim Struble. As he was dying, I had time to help everybody come to some closure.
Well, I think, as Betty shared, if you could elaborate a little bit about that, about how you played really an integral role in that whole journey for Jim and Betty. So how in having you as their physician, that differentiated their journey as from your perspective versus how it would have been in a traditional medical setting.
The thing that stands out the most for me is the poor man developed testicular cancer while he was in the nursing home with us. And I think had he been in a traditional practice, he would have ended up being sent to a urologist for a biopsy, and the man was terrified. And although it was very difficult, we did not treat that testicular cancer, and it allowed him to die in peace. And it's not easy to watch someone develop a cancer and have it be really manifest and not do anything. Not acting is sometimes the best thing you can do. And it's hard to be restrained because everyone thinks, got to do something.
Right, sure.
Sometimes it's better not to do something. And that was a good example.
Yeah.
That stands out the most for me, for the thing that took some guts on everybody's part, but was the right thing for him to do. He had no quality of life.
Yeah, it sounds like that's definitely something that would come to mind, that the traditional thought or methodology would be, yeah, let's start treating him, because other than, I guess, his mental situation, physically, he was okay.
He wasn't bad, yeah.
Right. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they find you?
Well, we're on we have a website that's Rockville Concierge Docs, not doctors, but docs.com, or our office number is 301-545-1811. And talk to my office manager.
And where is your office located?
We're in Rockville, not far from Shady Grove Road, not far from Shady Grove Hospital.
Okay. And hospital privileges, where do you have hospital privileges?
Shady Grove.
Okay.
We used to have privileges all over the place, but we decided that it was probably undoable. And the benefit of being at Shady Grove is that at least we can be physically present to prevent bad things from happening to people while they're in the hospital. Nobody wants to be in the hospital, and
Well, I think it's good
for
too.
good reason.
Yeah, that you get to be their advocate as
Right,
well.
right.
So that
Basically, I kind of fantasize that I'm standing there saying, "Don't touch my patient unless you tell me what you're doing in here."
Well, I want to thank you very much for being here today, Dr. Seidman. It was very, very helpful for me to have a better understanding of the concierge practice, and we'll look forward to seeing you all next time for Senior Solutions.